I'm coming on today to talk about recovery. As some people know, I am in recovery for BPD and CPTSD, and I feel like videos like these are important. Conversations like these in general are important because I feel like a lot of people are given the diagnosis but not really ever told that it's recoverable and that it's not like your life's not going to be like this forever. I know so many people that have gotten such a diagnosis and they're like, oh, this is just my life now forever because what people did to me as a kid. You know, but it is recoverable. You can recover from it. I'm currently in recovery. I believe you have to not fit within certain diagnostic criteria of it for a certain amount of years before you're like officially written off as recoverable, or as recovered. So while I'm doing better, it's like once I meet a certain time limit of this, then I will be officially recovered type of thing. But I wanted to talk about it. It's something personal to me. A because I already have it, but I do know some people who, I knew a guy that I was friends with who got the diagnosis when he was a teenager and didn't really have access to regular therapy. And after a certain point, just didn't have access to it at all. But he was given the diagnosis as a teenager, but nobody ever told him, like, this isn't forever and you can recover from it. It was just kind of like, here's the symptoms of BPD and it can be lifelong. And I think that really messed him up because anyone with CPTSD or BPD knows it doesn't just happen from nothing. You have to have gone through some pretty bad things to develop said disorder. And it felt like he just kind of gave up on himself and the world, and the diagnosis became an excuse, and he just believed this is how it was forever, and after a certain point, he didn't want help, and I know he turned to, sorry, my neck hurts. I know he turned to substance abuse to cope, and that just made things so much worse. That just made him so much worse, and I know he hurt me, and I know he hurt a lot of people he's never even met, but the combination of the two just made him so volatile, and he was just so deep in the mindset of nothing matters that he just did anything that he felt like doing while in such a negative spiral on top of drug abuse. And I think about him often, despite all the things that he did to me and other people. Like I can hold those two truths. That's a part of like developing emotional intelligence is two things. Multiple things can exist at once. And while I can be personally upset and damaged by what he did and other people, I can also see like how he was made, how he got there and what happened to him, and feel empathy for the person he was. And I think it's important to have these conversations because I feel like the world is not set up and designed to help people with really any mental health issues, but especially personality disorders, cluster B, BPD, CPTSD. I feel like modern psychology structures, modern mental health structures, whatever you want to call it, just any sort of structure that's meant to help you with mental health is not currently set up to help us. And I don't blame mental health officials for that. This is not me being anti-therapy. I think with healthcare and mental health deserts, because where I used to live, there was a shortage of mental health professionals and it was hard to get a therapist anywhere, even if you had health insurance. I think that naturally kind of sets us up for failure because not everybody has health insurance. And even when you do have it, like in my case, there might not be anyone with any openings because there's not very many mental health professionals where you live. So I think people make do with what they have, and a lot of that is just getting a diagnosis, but not getting the tools to work with it and recover from it and understand it. So I believe research is very important. If you get some sort of cluster B diagnosis or personality disorder, BPD, CPTSD, any of that, I think it is very, very important for you in this day and age to do your own research from approved sources and learn about your disorder and learn about the recovery rate and the recovery process and learn more about yourself along the way. I think a big part of recovery from both BPD and CPTSD is kind of discovering yourself. You need to discover and identify the things that trigger you. A big part of BPD is environmental. So some things that are going to trigger you are going to be specific individuals. I know for me, a big one, and the thing that made the biggest change in my life was my family. I had to get a restraining order against my mom in 2025, and it was awful, and it was the worst time of my life. And a lot of things went haywire in my life because of what was happening to me. But getting the restraining order is not a decision I would ever change because I think it was the best outcome for both me and my mom. While my mom has done a lot of messed up things to me and other people, I still have the empathy, especially as her child, that saw the things that happened to her growing up when I was growing up, when she was growing up, to identify like how she got there. But I think, I don't know where she's at in life now, but you would hope if you're to the point you're getting your child getting restraining order against you, you'd reflect on that, and think, wow, it's really bad. What can I do to change things? And my life immediately got better. That's not to make a jab at my mom. It just did. My life is factually better now, and it started because I cut off my family, that I went no contact. My husband is also no contact with his family, and that also improved his life. That is a big thing we can understand each other on. But once it got to that point, if you can cut off your family, you can cut off anybody. And once you identify who's triggering you or who's devaluing you or who's just some people in the world, it's crabs in a bucket. If you're doing better and they're not doing well, they want to pull you down. Or some people have very negative opinions about therapy or medication in general. I've even had coworkers at previous jobs try to talk to me or try to make negative comments about me on being on medication because they don't believe in that sort of thing. But I'm like, oh, well, if it's the difference between taking a pill or feeling like I want to die all the time or going into psychosis, I'm probably going to take the pill that is giving me results. And I think a big thing you should be aware of when starting the process of recovery is medications, therapists, psychiatrists. If any of those three are not working out for you, you can try new ones. You can get a different psychiatrist, you can get a different therapist, you can try a different medication. I'm going to list all the ways that I've had to do that in recent times. I know I lost my psychiatrist. I believe that's the right word. The person who prescribes you medication, they're not your therapist. I believe a therapist might be called a psychologist. I'm not sure of the difference. I'm not personally in the field or trying to be. But the person who prescribes you medications and talks through it but isn't there to therapize you, I believe the psychiatrist. My original one had to retire, and she referred me to somebody she knew that had recently started their own firm, and I know it was not a fit because in my first meeting with her, where I was in a very horrible spot and I was trying to get access to antipsychotics or antidepressants, anything that this woman thought would better me. But I had been on an antipsychotic before I came to her, and it was giving me facial spasms and all the negative things where it says in the big giant paper that comes with it to immediately stop taking it. So I stopped taking it. I'm talking to her. I'm explaining my situation. You have to go through all the horrible stuff you've been through. You have to go through the attempts you've made, because I have survived multiple suicide attempts. And you have to know that, like, these people aren't going to always necessarily handle you with kid gloves because they're not your therapist. But I knew she wasn't the fit for me because when discussing my suicide attempts and the fact that I currently felt suicidal and needed help with that, either through therapy or medication, whichever I could get a hold of first, she asked, well, why haven't you done it yet? Why haven't you killed yourself? What's keeping you from doing it? And the way she said it, of just like, where I'm like crying and being like, yeah, it's gotten bad enough with all this stuff where I currently feel like I'm gonna kill myself. And she was just like, well, why haven't you done it? I was like, yeah, I don't think this is a fit for me. And she wasn't, and I got a new psychiatrist. In the realms of medication, as I said, with one example was the antipsychotic, where I just had a bad reaction and I had to immediately stop it so I wouldn't have a worse life-threatening reaction. But there's also some where the medication genuinely helped me, but I started to develop symptoms that outweighed the pros. Like, I was on topiramate, which is an anti-seizure medication, but it has therapeutic use for people with PTSD and CPTSD because it targets your nervous system. And while it did help me a lot, and it helped me get sleep, and it stopped, a big thing for me, it stopped CPTSD loops and emotional flashbacks. Those were all pros, but the cons that started coming into play is it made me very forgetful. Like the type of forgetful where you leave your house with a stove on, or you leave your keys in the car and the car running, or you just can't remember things. Like, I even know, like, trying to get words out of my brain when I was on topiramate started to become difficult. Like, I couldn't remember words. Like, I felt like I was developing dementia. It was kind of scary. But that's an instance where I'm not just going to continue that medication. You know, it was helping me, but it was causing negative downsides. You can change psychiatrists, you can change therapists, you can change medication, but you need to be willing and open to doing all of those things. And you need to take note when they're not working and put your foot down and say, yeah, I got to try something else. So I think those are very important to keep in mind when you are starting on this journey. Everyone's going to hand you journaling. Just do it. If you can't keep it consistent, do it. For people with BPD, I'd say do it when you are spiraling as a part of DPT, or as a part of DBT. Sorry, dialectic behavioral therapy. I think that's what it stands for. When you are getting into like a split, when you're splitting, use that to write out all your rage and never show anyone. Even burn it after if you want to. Who gives a fuck? But don't go outlet that onto other people. Outlet that on a piece of paper. You can do, some people do video diaries. I have video diaries. Don't post them. Don't post them. The internet is cruel. You can delete them after. Like I said, just like with a journal, you can burn it after. Some people do just audio where you record on your phone and you just vent it out. But you need to put that energy somewhere. But I would use journaling as a way to chart progress. Not just by looking at what you write when you split now versus what you write before, but also to see, like, how have things changed through my documentation, and what are the triggers I have identified? Is there a pattern here? What am I writing about, and what is the pattern between them? A big thing for me is I had to become aware of my triggers, and that's not just something you do overnight. Like, that is a reflection thing, and you might not be totally aware of them, and the therapist is not going to magically find them because they don't know all of the worst things that have ever happened to you and how they made you feel in every little detail like you do. You're having conversations with them and they're building rapport, and they will eventually learn these things, but they're not just going to magically find them, and you're going to have to work with them and with yourself to find them. And I know a big one for me that I found over time is, this is going to sound crazy, winter, snow. That is a trigger for me. I have seasonal affective disorder lamps that I have to use when winter comes. When I was 19, I tried to kill myself. It put me in a coma. I woke up from my coma and nobody took care of me after, and it was winter, and I lived in a very ancient rental with a floor furnace as the heating system, and it went out. And I had just survived a suicide attempt to go home and almost freeze to death. My windows froze over. Me and my pets had to huddle together in my bed. And I know it just was such a soul-crushing event to be like, did I really survive a suicide attempt to now freeze to death alone in my home? So now when it gets cold out, when it snows, my mood drops. It's not as bad as it was. I can regulate now, but I genuinely, it's like I become a different person. And I I know my husband, in his own way to help me, he made sure I have a very warm winter coat. I have multiple that are stylish and fashionable. I have winter gloves, and I have a fur winter scarf. And that was his way of helping me, and I'm very appreciative for that. But that was something I wasn't cognitively aware of. I just know life would always get bad around winter months. But now I can proactively take the steps when the weather starts to get bad, because it's now starting to get cold where I live. I know to wear warm clothing. We got me wool house shoes at the farmer's market from an Irish sheep farmer. And that helps a lot. But I would definitely say if I had my own personal Silent Hill, because their version of how they see Silent Hill is based off of their own mental things, it would be a horrific miasma of winter storms and snow. I hate the snow. I genuinely hate cold weather. But that took time to figure out and process. And I think a big part of recovery and becoming a better person is accountability. Like I talked about earlier with emotional intelligence, multiple things can be true at once. Yes, you could have gone through some very horrific things. And yes, you could have gone into something like psychosis, because I've been in psychosis before. But you are also hurting the people around you, and it's not an excuse, it's an explanation. So you need to find a way to juggle those things and have accountability for yourself, because I really can't stand people who go on the internet and make posts like, I'm not going to ever apologize for the things I did while I was in survival mode. I was just trying to live. If you are genuinely hurting the people you care about and you care about them, you would apologize to them for what you did during that. You know, like, I know for me, another personal tangent here. I did go into psychosis, and it was very hard for the people around me. And I did have friends that had to step away because they're not trained professionals. I'm not a trained professional. And it's a horrific thing to go through. And I was really, really angry at the time at them for doing that. And I just spit pure venom. I was like, never talk to me again. I don't understand how you could do that. Like, it was just like, I hate you. With psychosis related to BPD, CPTSD, it's like every single dial is turned beyond the max. And you're just trying to make sense of the world around you and however you can, and it's the most insane ways possible. And I was awful to myself, and I was awful to other people. But you come down from that. It's not a forever thing. I know, to me, the worst part about it is, I'm going to explain it like this. Psychosis is a steady spiral downwards, but you're having these occasional stops in between the movement towards downwards, and you think, oh my gosh, I'm out of it. I'm fine. I don't need help. I'm doing so good, actually. I'm actually doing so great. I think it's just transient psychosis. No. Like, this is just like, it's just a blip. Like, I just have BPD. I'm just crazy. But no, it was a steady build up, a spiral downwards to full psychosis, and it was just getting worse and worse. And you get desensitized to how worse it's getting, to where you're not noticing it anymore. And you're like, I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine. And that was the worst part about it. But I did eventually come out of it. And how I explain that, like, coming out of psychosis to people who've never dealt with it, is, imagine you had a party of all the people you care about, all your friends. You invited them to this party, alcohol's involved. You're drinking, you're not noticing how drunk you're getting. You end up blackout drunk, and you wake up in the morning and there is vomit everywhere. You held this gathering in your home, and every square inch of your home, from the floor to the ceiling, is covered in vomit. And the first thing you feel is disgust. You're overwhelmed. You're like, oh my God, there's vomit everywhere. The vomit's on me. The vomit came from me. How did I throw up this much? What am I going to do to clean up all this vomit? And then you're like, wait, there was people at this party. Did I throw up before or after these people left? What did I say? What did I do? And then you find out, oh my gosh, I threw up on all the people I care about. So much on some people. And I said so many awful things, and I did so many things out of character, and I am genuinely so embarrassed and ashamed and overwhelmed. What do I do? Oh my gosh. That's how psychosis and coming out of it is like, in my opinion. And, you can't control whether or not people forgive you afterwards. That's not the point of you apologizing. When you apologize, it's not to expect forgiveness or the mending of a relationship. You're apologizing because it's accountability, and that's your duty if you fuck something up. And I will say I'm very lucky in the sense that some of those friends that stepped away, one of my long-term friends that I've known since high school, he actually came back and reached out to me later, and he apologized to me, and I felt so bad because I'm like, no, I need to apologize to you. I mean, I truly went off, and like after he stepped away and was like, never talk to me again, and brought up any of the awful stuff we've ever been through, and I was just like, get away from me. And I remember I told him, because I thanked him for coming back in my life and being there for me and waiting for me on the other side of this, because CPTSD, BPD, psychosis, all of that, when it gets that bad, it's like getting lost. And when there's people on the other side, like my friend was, who's still there for you after, it feels like you were so lost, and you finally found your way home, and all you can really say is, thank you for waiting for me to get back home. And I'm very thankful for him, and we talk every day, and we both moved to Europe and got the fuck out of America. And that's still, like, that's my brother. Like, that's my best friend. That's my brother to me. When you cut off your family, because both me and my husband are both no contact, you build your own. And that guy, despite everything I said, still came back and said, I'm sorry. And that he's just always going to be my brother. There's nothing left to say. That is my brother. That's my family. And it's hard because you can't apologize to everyone that you did that to either. But you still have to mentally take it in and identify what you can do different next time. And while I didn't have the resources to get help, now that I do, I can plan ahead for that. I know anytime my mental health has gotten bad, because there's still ups and downs. It's not like a linear thing. You don't just go, oh, I'm getting better. It's more like, I'm getting better. That was not as bad. I'm getting better. That's not as bad, but I'm getting better. I have had those conversations with my husband of like, I can identify how I feel and the signs. And if I believe it's bad enough, I'd like to check myself into inpatient care or outpatient, whichever one is available. But I've had those conversations with my husband, and I'm like, I'm not doing this for no reason, and I don't want to be separate from you, especially when I'm in a vulnerable state like that, but that's what's best for everyone, including you, and especially for me. And thank God I've never, had to do that. I've not gotten that bad where I need to be institutionalized. But those are important things you have to take away from these experiences. I know for me, how I've identified that I am getting better is that I can regulate a lot better. I feel like since I went no contact with my family, and I've made all these changes to my life, and I have my routines, and I've gone to therapy and all that, it's not really BPD that I struggle with anymore. It's CPTSD. It feels like once I got away from my family and I got therapy and I developed a support system, it felt like, okay, things are not turned all the way up anymore. I don't have euphorias, and when I have lows, it's not crazy. It was almost like you're so used to having such intense emotions all the time, you almost feel emotionally numb, but you're like, no, this is just normal baseline, and this is what people feel. That's something you have to get used to. But then it was like, oh, well, all I have room for now is CPTSD, and medications helped, therapy helped, but then it was like, okay, well, I've cut one head off the hydra and another has popped up. How do I deal with this? Because with CPTSD, it's not even that you are blowing up anymore, it's that you just can't stop remembering. Like, emotional flashbacks are hard. Emotional flashbacks can make me so depressed, like I don't want to get out of bed anymore. Emotional flashbacks can make me so angry at like what has happened to me and the moral injury of that, like none of the people who did that, like they just got away with it scot-free. Sometimes that just makes me so angry. I can feel my heart, like it feels like it's beating out of my chest. And I feel like instead of causing like emotional craziness where all your emotions are turned up, CPTSD is like the doom disease where you just feel doomed and you lose hope and you're like nothing fucking matters anymore, and if all these people could get away with this, then what does anything matter, and things will never get better. And that's like its own thing to deal with, where you have to like constantly fight towards the idea of hope. And it can be really exhausting, especially with real world events and how things are being handled right now with some very horrific things. How a lot of very horrific people are getting away with the worst crimes against humanity, be it war or towards children or far worse. And you have to like find a way to cope, where whether that's like, okay, I will be the good change in the world, I will be the hope in the world. If I can't find it anywhere, I will be that thing. And I think that's where I'm at currently, is I don't have the BPD like explosive highs and lows, and I can regulate, and like I feel like a normal person for the very first time in my life. But I think now I'm just dealing with CPTSD and the moral injury of like, oh my gosh, these things did happen to me and nobody stopped it, and people got away with it. And then I see things like what's going on with current events, and I'm like, oh, there's worse than what I went through out there, and it's very heavily documented, and nothing's being done about it. Well, I don't have the BPD urge to just kill myself all the time. How am I gonna deal with this then if I don't have that? Because like I want to be alive. It is okay, I will be the good that I want to see in the world then. How do I do that? How do I get involved with my community? How do I help people? If it's just sharing my story that helps people, or if it's being active in community work, what can I do to restore the hope in myself and be the change I want to see? And it's hard. And I'm not gonna lie, I still have down days. I still have days where I'm stuck in like a CPTSD loop for like the whole day. It doesn't happen very often, and I have to have very specific triggers, but it has happened and it's fucking awful. But I can get out of it, and I think that's why I'm making this video, is I need people who do have these issues to know and see and have tangible proof, because I know how hard it is to hold on to that hope that things can get better, and that one day you can get better and you can feel normal and you can recover from this and you can just have a happy life, and that it is possible. Because if I feel like I don't have that hope in the world, I know anyone else with this is going to feel the same way, and I need to give them tangible proof. I need to be that proof for myself and others. And that's why I make videos like this. That's why I started my game. That's why I do a lot of the things I do. I feel like this has turned into a really long rant. My apologies. But I think this is a good stopping place. To anyone that's listening, wherever you are, whatever time of day it is, good morning, good evening, and good night.